Jakey?
Shall we talk business? There we are. So we got that good. We got it off the ground.
This episode is brought to you by Bay Juice. Bay Juice translates to pear in Korean. That's right, Bay Juice is 100% Korean pear juice. Oh, it's absolutely filled to the brim with micronutrients. You want to know how you get max results? Wrap your succulent lips around Bay before you wrap them around an alcohol beverage this weekend. It should be the first thing you drink on a night out, and it'll be the first thing you thank in the morning. Righto, let's get into the show.
Joe, thanks for your time, mate.
No problem.
Really appreciate you being here. This is the first of this.
Big guest, first up.
Big guest.
Jobe Watson.
And really excited to talk about everything we're going to talk about. I think for everyone listening, this is our first episode of Aces in Business. So it's a new podcast that we've come up with. And this is more about talking to people that we know really well, that do a lot of great things in business and other things away from what everyone probably knows you as a football guru. So, yeah, mate, really excited about today, and especially me. We've got a lot of things you like to talk NFL, a lot of passion there for the NFL.
We have to give a shout out to Braden as well. Look at this. We're in a roaming caravan here. It's unbelievable. You said you haven't. Have you seen anything like this before?
Not at all. The setup is amazing. Just go and park it, get a 2-hour bay, and then move on. I mean, it's convenience.
Well, it's safe to say we took on Elliot Loney's criticism pretty seriously when he had to pay $28 for parking last week.
In football, I've had a lot of feedback in my time. Act on it as quick as they can, so I can get a game the next week. So
the start keep. Yeah. You know all about it.
So stop making your guests drive to Richmond and park $28 for an hour, and come to them. So we've found a solution. So thank you to Roland Media, the new guys looking after us. Well, we'll start with now, Joe. What are you up to at the moment with yourself?
So, full-time dad, which is keeping me busy. Got 2 little ones and a third on the way. So it's exciting. It's a fun house. It's chaos, but enjoying it. A long time ago, I was a selfish footballer, and then children level you out very quickly. You realise you're not the most important person in the room. So that's been a fun adjustment. And then still working in property business. So we buy residential properties for investors and owner-occupiers, and manage rent rolls as well. And then a few other ventures that I've been undertaking over the past few years, and obviously have the cafes and the hospitality group over in New York, and then have just started an instant coffee business here in Melbourne. So Morning Joe Coffee is the group that has probably been a 2-year process to get us to a stage where we've got production and a product that's out in the customers' hands, and it's been a fun process to go, from starting from scratch.
Hey, that's unreal. When did the Morning Joes go live?
So we went live in January. And
of this year?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Year,
so it's that new?
Yeah, we started talking about it and sort of working through it about 2.5 years ago with myself and business partners, and my partner Virginia's involved as well. So the 4 of us are all in the company, and really started from just looking at gaps in the market. Yeah. Didn't necessarily have to be coffee, but obviously I've got a background in cafes and hospitality, and we were looking at alcohol-free beer about 3 or 4 years ago, and just sort of didn't have the time to get it off the ground. But then we pivoted and looked at instant coffee and have really enjoyed the process of sourcing a coffee and then going from nothing to creating a business out of it.
It's pretty crazy. Can we start talking about the coffee journey? Because
I think so.
Did that open up on the New York venture when you went for that year when obviously the suspension happened, or did that happen before? Were you always interested in the sort of barista coffee?
It was funny. I was always interested in cafes and hospitality. And at the start of 2016, when we got banned, I would walk across the road to the cafe near my house, and they were really good guys, and I knew them really well. And then just one day I was there, and I just said, "Look, you guys just teach me how to make coffee." And they said, "Sure, yeah, stand here and do this and burn the milk and all that sort of stuff." And this was like after they'd sort of closed. This was just a cafe in Middle Park, and then so once I did that and I felt like I had learned something about it. Then when I moved to New York, I got connected to Barry, who had started the Hole in the Wall, which was literally a cafe that was an old newspaper stand. A news agency inside a building in Avenue of the Americas, and so it was a tiny little space. It was big enough for like a machine, and the only other thing we had bakery sort of goods and a little toaster where we made like a smashed avo, and that was it. So Barry took me on. I came up to him and said to him, "Listen, mate, I've got a lot of free time here in New York. Things could go one way or the other.
Exactly right.
a lot of vices in New York. It's not quite Vegas, but it's not far away. So I need some structure and I need to be organised. And I'd love the opportunity to do something that I didn't ever really do as someone who was, in a professional athlete here in Melbourne. And that's, just to have something a little bit mundane where I could just, meet people and talk and just be, chew the fat, which is what I really loved about it. And he said, yeah. And then I said to him, man, I'll work for free. I don't want to get paid for it. I'd love to just come here and help out.
Well, it's Essendon great, Jobe Watson. He's got a year off. He's gone into a random cafe in New York and goes, mate, I'll work for free. If you can teach me how to make coffee. That's not real.
It's unbelievable. How hard is it to make? I mean, I've learnt once at a friend's cafe in Freo there, but obviously I butchered it.
Yeah.
How hard is it to learn, and how long did it take you to nail a coffee?
Yeah, it took, I reckon, make 1,000 coffees just before you start, like every sort of one becomes consistently good. Yeah. And luckily, like the Americans don't necessarily have as sophisticated palate as what we do.
It's 1,000 angry.
There was a lot of time where I just shoved the lid on and just handed it there, and they didn't want them to look at what the bubbles and things like that I created.
Do you have like an opinion of their coffee before you went over there? Because naturally it's pretty bad if I compare to here.
Well, like every Australian and particularly a Melburnian is, whenever you were anywhere around the world, you'd try and find an Australian cafe.
Yeah,
that was what you'd be looking at on Google or Yelp or whatever it was, and saying like, is there any Aussies who have started something here?
Yeah.
And so I was exactly the same. I had the same philosophy about it. But that was the introduction to Hole in the Wall and the cafes there. And obviously there's been others who were sort of further ahead of us. Bluestone Lane is a huge one over there with Nick Stone and Andy Stone, who've gone on to sort of conquer all of America and doing really well. And we're sort of a few years behind them. But Barry and the team over there have done a wonderful job at growing not just Hole in the Wall, which is the cafe arm of the business, but we've got a fine dining restaurant now, Isla, Daintree, which is a bar. We've got a membership club over there. So Parched Hospitality Group, which is what we are, is I guess the umbrella, and underneath that is all these sort of hospitality ventures, and it's really been driven by these Australians. So Barry's a Western Australian, and we try to employ as many as Australians as we have. Right. Any Australians over who are listening, and they'd love an opportunity to go and work. In New York, we're always looking for Australians to come over and work for us. We can get visas and things like that, and we love being able to have the Australian feel in our cafes, and I think our customers really love it, enjoy it as well. So it's been a really interesting development from something that was so small into something that's growing now, and it's been a really enjoyable one. And a lot of the credit goes to Barry, who's the managing director, Barry Dry, who's been able to grow the business.
So did you, when you started this, I guess, hospitality group, is this with Barry? Is there anyone else in it along with you yourself?
Yeah, so there's originally sort of 5 owners of it, and so Barry and his sister, and then 2 mates from West Australia that he grew up with, and then I was the sort of the 5th person, and then we've as we've grown and we've taken on more capital and things like that, we've obviously had new partners come along, did some raises. the plan is to continue to try and grow the business. Looking at putting in cafes in Miami at the moment. Isla is going down to Miami as well as a fine dining. Looking at Atlanta, continuing to grow out in New York. So it's been a really fun journey, and the guys have done a great job, and we get an enormous amount of support of Australians. It's been difficult over the last 2 years, but the amount of people who would, tag me in a photo or on Instagram saying, "I went to your cafe, I had a great coffee." Like, we get a lot of people who are traveling who have really been very supportive of it. So we're very thankful.
Mate, I'm just picturing being Barry. Imagine Jobe Watson walking in asking, "Can I work for free?" And then all of a sudden your business partner's in a hospitality group. It's pretty...
Well, I'm visualising this little tiny cafe that you mentioned, and now we've got this empire. And it's incredible. How hard is it to get it from that little cafe to now what you're doing? Yeah,
well, I guess, Barry's been very diligent about the location. That was always key. As we grew, and I guess the every step you take is there's a lot of risk with it, because you're taking on new capital, and it's a new venture, and there's expenditure and things like that. But we looked at the location was always key. Being able to find something that is close to monuments and close to subways that have multiple lines running through it, and those sorts of things are the parameters. Outside space, and so each step you take, you're trying to continue on a formula that makes sense. But early on, obviously, the limited amount of exposure you have is difficult, because you've got you don't know what you're doing. Like you're taking, you sort of dipping your toe in the water, but you've got to, if it fails early on, it's very hard to convince people to then put in more money to, make it work next time. So you have to build slowly. And that's what he's been able to do. And just as he's grown, we were able to take some advantage. We did a capital raise internally in December 2019. So just before COVID hit. So we had a fair bit of capital, and then we were able to sort of pick up some sites that probably we wouldn't have been able to afford pre-COVID, but we had the capital to be able to do it, and then took over them as rents plummeted. So we were able to get into spots that we would never have been able to afford afterwards. So, part of it is just luck and timing.
Through crisis comes opportunity. How much capital would you have to raise to be able to do this next step?
Well, I guess you're probably looking for a first-time cafe with maybe a 40, 50 seat sort of thing, and we were doing it on a budget. You're probably looking at raising 300 US, something like that, to start yourself off. And then as you get bigger, obviously more and more money that you're raising. And it's not just always bigger is better either. The bigger you are, the more responsibilities, the more management that's required, all those sorts of things, the more things that can go wrong. So I think it's what patience is something that is really important in it. You want to sort of build slowly until you've got all the right I guess systems in place to be able to withstand that type of really quick growth or those problems that come with quick growth.
One thing, me and Tommy were actually very keen to speak to you about this Gary Vee engagement you had. But one thing you actually said on the conversation with him, which resonated, probably were a little bit better than I was when you were playing, but is when you're sort of tied to a sport and a career, you kind of lose a bit of, your own self-discovery and finding out what you like and who you are potentially outside of that sport, because you're so defined by it. When did you kind of establish that you were interested in property, had this interest in coffee? Was that in your career, or was that sort of when you had that year off, you kind of started to spread your wings a little bit?
Yeah, I think I had the interest when I was still playing, and when I was that was my sole focus, but it certainly expanded in the year off when I had the mental space and the time to be able to cultivate it. And that's what I felt was the really defining year in my life, was that 12 months off, because it gave me the opportunities for self-reflection and self-discovery. And I hadn't had that kind of time or devoted that amount of time before when I was full-time as a AFL footballer, where now I look back and think of almost like my life was, was the Robert Frost two paths sort of thing. Like it was that divergence in the wood type scenario, and I was able to take a path that I really hadn't even thought was there. And I guess that was just, I look back on it as just a wonderful opportunity, to have able to have done that. So whenever I, talk to players or to people who are, asking for, what did you do or advice or anything like that, I always talk about, like if you can have the ability to finish your career and take time off for self-discovery, that would be the one thing that I would, my advice or would impart on people was so valuable to me.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy because you think when you're going into that year, you think, oh, this is going to be terrible or tough. Yeah. And now you look back in hindsight, it's like one of the most, empowering moments of probably your life to set you up for where you are now. Can you talk to us about why New York, like what that gave you? Because he loves his American sport. He loves the American culture.
Yep.
Like the energy around New York, something you've spoken of a lot. Like when you say that, what exactly do you mean?
Well, like Tommy, I'm a huge NFL fan. I had been to New York for on multiple occasions previously, but I'd always wanted to immerse myself in a city. And whenever I travelled, I always felt like I was, obviously living in a suitcase and moving on. And the value for me to be in New York was about really feeling like it was a place where I could reside and felt like almost home. I had friends who were there who were obviously a big part of me wanting to go there too, because I wanted to know some people. But I just felt like it was the right city for me to go to. And I think, with what had transpired here, I think being, being anonymous and being able to just feel like I could be myself without the pressure of feeling like people were judging or had a preconceived idea about myself, I think was something that I was craving to at that stage of my life.
That's awesome.
When you were there with everything going on down here in Melbourne, and obviously you've just checked out, at what point do you reckon throughout the time there you started to feel, almost human again? You're not worrying about all these stresses, all the pressures of being a skipper and all that, all the media conferences you would have done, everything. And I know a lot about yourself and other people, how you would have gave more of yourself to everyone else, and that does take a lot of energy out of you.
Yep.
At what point in New York did you start to go, hang on, I'm starting to get over this hump now. I'm starting to really just cherish all this kind of cafe opportunities and all these people I'm meeting and the energy and everyone else around me?
Yeah. I was there for, probably about 2 months. And then we went on this trip. We went on a canoeing trip up north in New York State, in the Catskills. And this was around 4th of July, so I'd probably been there 2 or 3 months. And it was like in the middle of nowhere, doing something like on a canoe for 5 days, camping in the, and it just felt like a total disconnect from every other aspect of my life. And it was like I was just, in nature and almost completely free of all the weight that I'd been carrying. And I felt like that was a really therapeutic trip for me. And that was almost like a really healing type of trip that I was able to undertake. And I had enjoyed, from the moment I stepped off the plane and arrived in New York, I felt like was starting to heal and felt better about being there. But I distinctly remember that trip and just feeling so like I was breathing again and felt comfortable again.
It's pretty. So when you went there, I heard you wrote a list of like things you wanted to accomplish. Some were kind of quirky, some were actually probably more towards where you wanted to go.
Yep.
What was on that list? Like, if
there's all sorts of things. Like, I wanted to live in. This was before I was back in Melbourne when I did it. When I wrote the list before I took off, so it was I wanted to live in another city. I wanted to learn 3 new skills. I wanted to meet someone. I wanted to. I can't remember a couple of the other things, but they were a mixture of I wanted to be out of my comfort zone. I wanted to really think about what what life would look like for me, those sorts of things. And then some of them were funnier and, like stupid. But
We're not stupid.
I've kept it somewhere. I've got it somewhere.
You tick most of them off, though.
Yeah, I did. I was really happy with how I did. I did all sorts of things that year. Like I filled so much into that period of time. I went hiking in Norway. I went on all these different places. I was in Sweden by myself, and all these things where you just don't feel like you really explore when perhaps you're in a routine. Yeah, and that was breaking of the routine that was really important.
Did that make you like almost not want to come back at any point because you were enjoying life so much and you were doing things that were so unique to what you'd normally done? And obviously in Melbourne, you're defined as always a footy player, and Tim Watson's son probably before you played footy. Like, was it nice to be away from that for a while and almost kind of, I don't want to go back to that at any point, or were you always coming back?
No, I was really struggling to come back. I moved my flight back. I kept moving it back and back and back because I was really I was battling coming home. Yeah. And my sister was getting married, so I had to come home. But I don't know. It wasn't easy for me to come home. It was a real struggle, and it was because I felt like I was about to. I felt like I was like a happier, healthier person away, and I didn't know that I wanted to subject myself to going back to something that was painful.
Yeah,
and
that's right. That's what I'd be thinking too.
Yeah, it was a really difficult. I was, where you're sort of avoiding something.
You're starting doors, mate.
I was going to say, you know it's coming, I reckon, at the end of the trip. I reckon you would have had that sweet spot right in the middle, and then you're like, oh, I've got to go home.
That's crazy. So you went through like adversity through your whole career, which is quite admirable, really. Like a lot of it was, unbeknown to what you could control. But do you find that that's helped you like operate with your business and day to day with people? Like, has that actually helped you in certain areas that you can kind of look back on and almost be a little bit grateful for how that's maybe matured you or made you sort of more aware of, the world that is? Yeah,
I really am. Grateful is the right way to describe it. I mean, the lessons that I've had and the experiences that I've had have turned me into the person that I am now. And I would much rather have had to fight and struggle for it than it had to have been easy for me. I think that as a player or as a professional athlete, you learn some really wonderful skills that you can carry on to the next phase of your life. But the transition from being a professional athlete to the world that you then go into, which is a very different one, is a difficult transition to make, and I feel especially for any athlete that struggles with that, because I can understand and empathise at how difficult that transition is, where you go from being completely absorbed by one thing and dominating your life, or it to be gone, and then to have to navigate the rest of your life and your world. And so for me, it's been, I look back on everything that I had as a really great opportunity, and I'm thankful for it.
Yeah. Do you have a view that players now that have platforms are probably going to be more relevant than they'll ever be because people want to watch them, people are fans of their footy clubs? Do you have a perspective on they should be using their platforms, their social medias, to kind of allow themselves to create a brand or create businesses that are going to set them up beyond, footy, for example?
I don't think that there should be. They should do anything that doesn't make them feel comfortable, because there are so many different types of personality types. Like I'm not an extroverted type of person. I would rather no one know anything about me, but I understand that is not how it really works. Like in society, like you need to be able to interact with people, and you need to be able to, and that's what business is about. I think that all players and all athletes should realise that they're never as relevant as when they're playing, and they just have to accept that. Because if you fight that, I think you end up living in the past, and I don't think that is a healthy way to approach it. I think that for people and players who want to facilitate their brand and and navigate, the social world and use the reach that they can have, I think that it's a wonderful opportunity for them, and it sets them up. It's like when I talk to people about property, and I talk to players, and I've helped a lot of players buy houses. I talk to them about the steps that most people take when they're buying a house. Most people buy buy an apartment, they save for another 3 or 4 years, and then they buy maybe a villa unit, and then they save for a bit more years, and then maybe they can afford a house. Right. And I was saying to you guys, like you're missing 12 years of steps here. And that's the opportunity that you have. You can go straight into buying a house.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit like I think what they can do with their brand and their social media reach is you've got this brand and this relevance that can elevate you, for 10 years plus that someone else might have to work for. And that's what you should use as leverage if you want to. If you don't want to, then there's no point in having a great social media following and a great brand if it makes you feel terrible about yourself.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah. Bit like Tommy, mate. He's got a big following.
No, you're spot on. I've dropped right off now. No, but it is funny because I've been, a year out. COVID doesn't help, right in the middle, not being able to do, certain things and probably haven't reflected as much as you wanted to. But I have said the same to a few people and some blokes that are of personalities that I feel like they've got more opportunity, but you can't push them. But I do think that there's probably, even going through it, you don't realise it until you're out. I probably realised it a little bit when I was a rookie.
Yep.
When I got a rookie contract, I went and I was literally losing money. My last year, I got there was a pay cut, 50%. I'm in Sydney. I literally was paying to play, which is pretty bizarre, but it is what it is. I actually love it. I owned it because no one probably has done that before. But that was when I was like, I've got a business here, brand. Maybe it is time to kind of step aside and then that's when you start to go, shit, I wish when I went to New York, I wish I didn't get that booth or wish I saved it more. It's pretty hard in the real world.
You'd never think like that.
No, that's not you, Tommy.
You've never had a bad booth.
That's him on camera.
Now you do.
But you make a good point, though, about the professional athletes. They get access to more things quicker because they're making, a surplus amount of money when they start making money. It's almost like there's almost a gap there, though. You're making almost the most money you'll ever make in your life, some of them, in their first few paychecks. Do you find there's the financial literacy aspect? Because you obviously spoke of when you're helping players buying properties. That guidance, I can imagine, must be, pretty important for some of them.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that what I would say, and my advice to players, specifically in AFL, I guess, is save enough money so that you can have a journey of self-discovery when the career ends. That would be my most valuable sort of piece of advice, I think, because I think that if you can have a 6-month or a 12-month period after the football ends for you, whether or not you've had a 12-year career and you feel completely satisfied, or you've had a 3-year career and you're bitter and jaded, I think that process is a really rewarding one that can really help you navigate the transition, but also facilitate the next growth in your life. Wow. And that I think is the one thing I would advise players, if you can save or put away, 5% or 2% a year, it'll be enough because it'll give you the opportunity to work out who you are and what you like. And those were the questions I didn't really ask myself until I had that 12 months off.
It's pretty cool. You could almost, for the listeners, it's relatable to kind of anyone that's doing any job that wants to change if they're in a position to do so, but almost having a sabbatical period to,
Probably going to book me a trip to New York.
All I'm thinking here is Tommy, we just started this podcast and he's going to be on a sabbatical in Miami working on it.
I certainly haven't done that. I haven't done that, and it's great. I mean, the next thing is when you did write that down, did you get the answers out and what were they?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I got the satisfaction of becoming a more rounded person and having greater perspective on life, having and being thankful for the things that I felt were negatives. And that's what I was able to do. I was able to reflect on who I was, what my life had been like up until that point, the direction that I wanted to take it, and it's not something that is it's like you need to keep reminding yourself about it as you're going too, because you can easily fall back into traps of, I don't want to do this or I don't want to do that. But, my philosophy for that 12 months was just to say yes to everything. It's a silly sort of thing think about it, but it was just to experience as much as I can. But life has a way of sort of pulling you back, to mundane, or you get into this level of comfort where you don't think you can do things and stuff like that. And I think you need to keep reminding yourself about that, and that's what I've been able to do.
How do you kind of keep business fun and enjoyable for yourself, especially when you're scaling out and getting so busy doing multiple things? Like for you, what are some of the values or principles that you really enjoy, day to day in your business operation?
Well, I try to just do things that I enjoy. So being involved in businesses that I'm interested in, that's the thing for me. So I love property, so I enjoy coming and working for property. I love coffee, so I enjoy learning about things that I don't know. So, I don't have a lot of experience building a brand, but I've really enjoyed, doing that. And I've enjoyed building an online presence and the importance of that. And I've enjoyed, sourcing, trying to find the best possible instant coffee we can, and then trying to find, compostable packaging and those sorts of things. Yeah, exactly. It's not easy, but for me, it's that's what life is about. It's about constantly learning. And enjoying that process, because if you're standing still, then you're going backwards. So for me, it's I've got to keep finding things that I don't know anything about. I need to feel like I'm a novice at things. Because then at least I'm learning something.
You've got so much on the go, right? So how do you go with your time management and putting all your energy into family and other things? Like you said, you've got to be very selfless now.
Third kid on the way.
Your third on the way.
Yeah.
I mean, how much sleep do you get as well? There's a lot going on. It's incredible. How do you find the time to be able to do everything so methodically?
Well, I think that for me, it's the family is the priority. So it just becomes everything works off the back of that. So if family feels like it's going well and it's catered for, then you have the opportunity to then focus your time and energy. I mean, you need to have discipline and structure, but if my home life is not working, or the family is suffering, or I don't feel like I'm getting the kind of connection with my children, or they're not having the kind of experience that I would want them to have, then it doesn't matter what business's life is like. It doesn't. Business could be great, but you're miserable. So, so that's the thing is it has to be. It's the number one priority for me, because really, I business is great, but it's pales in comparison.
Yeah.
Happy wife, happy life, Tommy, hey? Do you still have the F45 in New York?
Yeah, we've still got the F45. So that's been a real challenge with the lockdowns.
Yeah.
And the...
Because New York got smashed with it as well, didn't they?
Yeah,
I mean,
probably earlier than what we did. They've probably
correct.
come out of it now, where this winter hasn't been nearly as bad as what the previous two were. But we were shut like everyone, trying to negotiate rental. Relief and that sort of thing. And then gyms will, here, we've been one of the ones where it's been very, very slow to come back. There's wearing masks inside or distance that you have to keep, those sorts of things. So it's been a real challenge. And that's been, again, it's a good learning curve about things don't always go well. And you just have to, sometimes you just sort of got to grin and bear it and just work a way, like a plan through it.
So what were the effects of that? Was it just you can't open, memberships are on hold, for example, you guys are still paying?
Well, there was rental relief, so you're able to negotiate with the landlord about we're not getting any money here, so we've got nothing to pay you with.
Yeah, so giving them something is better than nothing.
Yeah,
example,
or
right?
just saying, listen, we will be able to pay you when we can start working again.
Right.
But at the moment,
what do you want us to do, mate?
you're gonna, if you kick us out, there's no one coming to take the spot off us, because that's what it was like. The whole city shut down.
Yeah,
crazy.
Yeah.
How did you get into that? Did you?
So when I was over there in 17, I was sort of looking at it, and I thought that there was a gap in the market again for that kind of exercise routine. And then an Australian guy who was here sort of approached me and said, look, I want to move over there with my wife and I'm interested in buying a franchise here. And I know you lived in Williamsburg. What do you think about the area? And I said, look, I did some investigating when I was there too about it. I think it's the right sort of profile for the people who are living there. And I think there's a lot of similarities between the kinds of people who are living in that area who would be the kind of clientele that I've seen be here and being involved in those and have really enjoyed and been the kinds of members that you see here in whatever, a high intensity sort of workout it is. But I thought that the profile of people who were living in Williamsburg are the right people who were the ones who used it here.
Fast-paced, yeah. That's amazing. We got to talk about, obviously you boys love your football, New York Jets, but the Gary V encounter. Obviously, I don't know if Gary V, I mean, he was huge when you spoke to him, but now he's like a phenomenon everywhere on social media talking about, marketing and strategies for all sort of juniors and kids. What was that? How did that happen? Like, how did you on the same couch with Gary V, in Melbourne? It's pretty crazy.
I had no idea who he was.
By the time.
No.
I was like,
do you know who he is now?
I know now. Yeah.
Okay.
But David Zaharakis had a podcast, and he had a clash with the time. They had somehow gotten Gary V on as a guest when he was coming out here, and then Zachar rang me and said, "Listen, mate, the club have said to us we've got to be at this thing and I can't get out of it. Gary V is coming to do it.
Jesus.
Can you fill in for me?" And I said, "Oh, okay, sure." And that was it. That was how it happened. So,
oh wow!
Yeah.
So you had no teed it up with all your New York connections.
So you had no idea, no prepreconceived anything about him before.
I sort of had to do some research on him. I knew he was a big Jets fan, so I thought I could talk about the NFL with him. But I didn't know anything else about it. So,
wow! Did you pick up anything off him at the moment? Did you kind of grasp when you were talking to him, this guy's pretty switched on, he's a big deal?
Well, obviously as soon as you start to look at some of the stuff that he was doing or the things that he was putting out there, and then when you talk to him you go, this guy's an absolute guru at what he's doing, and he's really, really clever, and you can see what he was he's picking trends 2 or 3 years ahead of stuff, and then since then I've followed him, I've been absorbing what he's been saying and things like that. But at the time, I was completely
Mate, isn't that
ignorant.
funny? What we would call over broken glass to speak to Gary V, and Jobe's just been subbed in and just met him without even knowing.
I generally thought that you teed that one up, and we were doing some research, and I was like, this is unbelievable. He's on the couch.
All I wanted to talk about was NFL.
Yeah.
I think that's all you want to talk about too, right? He's itching for it.
He goes to the Jets. I feel sorry for him.
Yeah, I know. But it was interesting. He was talking about, Sam Darnold at the time. So Sam Darnold Jets had just picked him up with the number 3 draft pick. And he was like, I would do anything for Sam Darnold to help him out because of my love for the Jets. But that relevance is gone, now because he got traded and things like that. And so that was what he was talking about. It was like with sport and whatever people's passions are, if they have someone there who's involved in that, they would bend over backwards to help them. But that relevance can really quickly go.
So true, isn't it? He talks about wanting to own the Jets now.
Yeah, I think he would.
That's his goal, life goal almost.
Wait a few more years. They've got a good coach now. I like where they're going. I think they've made a couple of key decisions.
I don't know if ownership has really demonstrated that they're any good at what they do.
Nah. He's the Jets have been. I mean, because when Eric Decker was there, I went and watched. I felt like they were going, and then they just kind of all just folded. I think he said they just cut everyone that was over 30.
Yeah,
it's pretty poor, I thought, and they've been struggling for the last 5 years.
Speaking of sports management and I guess ownership as such, but within the AFL, just from a business standpoint, because obviously you had front row seats to how it operates, and you're obviously very switched on now with business. If you were in a CEO position of a club, is there anything really obvious that you would think implementing into an AFL operation would really make it better, significantly better, that's maybe missed now that you've kind of seen both sides of the coin?
I think they just become so absorbed by results and the immediate, and it becomes so emotional. And that's the difficult thing about it. It's the reason why people spend so much money on supporting their team, but it's also such a detriment when you're trying to manage that organisation as well. Is that it becomes so reactive, and it's so. it's such a waste of time by being reactive. Like you lose the opportunity to plan and to stay the course or to implement change. And I think that's what happens in the NFL is that no one ever really gets the opportunity to change anything unless they have success early, because then that success early buys you time. But otherwise, you just become reacting, and it becomes like this circle. And I think that the greatest thing about sport is the emotion that it invokes in people, but it also becomes one of its biggest detriments is when you're trying to deal with that emotion and what you do with that emotion that it invokes.
And then the pressure externally, and then the media, and then it's like, oh, we're gone.
It's true though. It's a highly emotional environment, isn't it?
It's like it's funny. One of your I think it was the front bar, your first game. I think you said, I don't know if you had 2 touches or 2 tackles, but my last game, I had 1 touch at 3/4 time. Right? And you'd understand, like, it's my first game back after tearing a calf tendon.
Oh, no.
And I just, where my head was at 3/4 time? I was like, I've literally embarrassed my family right now. Everyone's watching. And then, thank God, I got like 4 cheap kicks at the end. I come off with 5. But you're literally like, you're reacting to that one game. I got dropped. But I actually played a really strong game as a team player, like, with your patterns and all that. But, mentally, you're like, I'm done. And it's probably exactly how the coaches are thinking, he's no good anymore. Let's get rid of him. Yeah. But it's funny enough, when you get beat by 100 or you win by 30, that can happen back to back. You can win one week and then you can lose by 50. Yeah. All of a sudden, the worst team ever. I love that. The most important rounds for a team are the first 4 rounds, because if you're not going well in the first 4 rounds, then immediately your whole season becomes reactive. You're reacting to external things, and that's just, it's so counterproductive. If you thought about it, the next 6 months of our business, if you're running a business, a football club as a business, is going to be a reaction to the first month of it.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
That's how it operates.
We've all been there, mate. The reviews go from 30 minutes to 2 hours. Players are like,
I can imagine both of your boardroom conversations are a little bit more lighthearted than copping a spray by Ross Lyon at halftime for not hitting
I could listen to this. So Scott Gumbleton lived with me, and he went and played with and I could listen to Ross Lyon stories over and over.
You've got
hours and hours.
I'm sure you do.
I need a year of self-reflection.
I reckon you get the shakes if you walked around a corner and saw him at a coffee shop or something.
No, we had a good relationship, but then the next day it was the worst one. It was great. No, it was just, like you said, I'm very grateful for being ripped a new one every second week. Yeah. But it's hard work. But yeah, they're very funny when you're not on the end of them.
Yeah. They're hilarious.
Like, there's things like, there was one day where, I'm good mates with Hayden Sloth, right? So he's a rookie, and he's like, and he didn't manage this in the room. He's like, look, boys, I don't give a fuck if you're our best player on the list, Matty Pavlich, or you're fucking Hayden Sloth. But just get it done. And then we walked out, I'm like, fucking stiff Sloth. And he's like, fucking hell, what a stitch up that is. Shocking. And he's like, I didn't mean it like that. What are you trying to say? He's a rookie and then a skipper, but fucking way it come out. Do
you find any, through your experiences of copping treatment like that, probably in the 4 walls of footy, do you find the way you look at your employees now, obviously you're not giving them those pep talks, but just in regards to how you treat them, work with them daily, get the best out, make sure they're enjoying their job, because obviously it's works both ways on that front.
Yeah, it's a very different beast. It's a very different beast working with people in everyday society, and then coming from a locker room where the locker room feedback is it's just. It is what it is. There's no way around it. It's not around that. Yeah. And I think what it stems from is in the locker room or in the football world, it's very rare to be in an environment where everyone is trying their absolute best at one common goal. Mm-hmm. It doesn't necessarily happen a lot in the business world. Yeah. But in the sporting world, you have a collective who are all trying as best as they possibly can. And so that environment allows for brutality of feedback. Like it is, because that's what everyone's demanding of each other. So if you're not there, you find out really quickly. Whereas that's not really how the world works. Like in everyday life.
Yeah, it's true. It was 18 teams, 1 trophy, so 17 are going to be pretty.
A lot of feedback.
Yeah, a lot of film.
That's the thing. There's a camera. We just got eye in the sky, but it doesn't lie either. So doesn't. You think you're going all right, and there's just one clip. You could find it. The thing I used to hate though, you could find one shit clip on everyone if you.
And you can run it cycles.
So if you want him to be dropped, you could find a reason why.
Yeah.
But it's great. Well, back to the New York. Who's some of the coolest people you've ever seen in your cafes or you've met when you were there?
That's a good question, actually. I'm trying to think who we saw. Emily Blunt. The actress. I saw her one day.
She came to Hole in the Wall, did she?
No. I was sitting at a cafe in Williamsburg, and she was sitting a couple things down. I didn't do a lot of I was sort of a lot of dive bars in New York. I wasn't sort of going bottles and table service like you told me.
I was there for 2 weeks. Not so funny now.
Buy your house, probably.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking forward to going to New York and hitting these dive bars.
Yeah, One Oak. One Oak's a club, but anyway.
Yeah.
But like the guys who were sort of there, like Barry and stuff like that, he had a lot of really great stories about all the big celebs and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I know you want to go into the property and you've got some questions from the listeners, but I'm keen to know for you in your position, particularly for the listeners like first home buyers or second home buyers, what's sort of some of the foundational things that they can leverage off your intelligence to, I guess, make the right decisions and the right investments there?
Yeah, I think most people buy between 3 and 5 properties in their lifetime. So you're not supposed to be an expert at it. It's a really difficult process to go through, and most of the time you're dealing with people who are really, really experienced but are acting for the opposition. So agents act for the vendors. Advocacy, we work for the buyers. I think for the best advice I can give someone is to, if they're going out on a loan, do your due diligence. Location is the first, second, third, and fourth most important thing. There's 3 things you can't change about a property. You can't change where it is, you can't change how much land it is, and you can't change its orientation. They're the 3 things that you should always focus on. And if you've got to stretch yourself for it, you're better off stretching for the right one than just buying something.
Right.
Because the market doesn't always go up. And it's like a share market. So people look at the property market as in its totality, and they go, okay, well, the property market went up 20% last year, for example. But there's different assets within that class, and not all of those assets rise at the same rate. Yeah. So if you're buying a 1-bedroom apartment, that has risen at a different level to a 500 square meter house. And so I think that what you buy is so important, and people should take the time to be really clear and diligent about what it is that they're acquiring.
Okay. So, I mean, for when you're sort of talking about diligence, are you talking about going to different sort of opens and, looking at all the different forms of property in different areas before you actually pull the trigger on a decision? Or are you talking about working with someone like yourself potentially and getting that advisory through it?
Well, I think ideally you always outsource to someone who's an expert if you're not, especially with the amount of money that you're spending.
Correct.
I used an advocate to buy my house because I had made a bad decision the first time around. And I was like, I'm an idiot here. I just spent this amount of money and I didn't really know what I was doing. I understand not everyone has the capacity to outsource it, but I think it's just about the due diligence is what am I buying and why am I buying it? Okay. What makes a good property?
Yeah.
And I don't I think because we do it so infrequently from a purchasing sense, a lot of people don't know what makes a good property.
Okay.
But there are fundamentals that do. Why is this property worth more than this one?
Yeah.
Well, what are the things about it that the market likes? And the market is when I'm talking to people, if you need to sell or if you have to sell, the one thing that you want is as many people as possible buying it from you.
Yeah.
And that's what you should be looking for.
It's a bit different to your tactic, eh, mate? Going on his Instagram story going, "Where should I live?" ? Out to his followers. I think maybe you need to take some of Joe's advice here.
Each to their own time.
It might work.
Just on the housing market, where's Melbourne heading in 2022 and beyond?
I think there's going to be a tapering and a softening of the market. I think it's already happening. We're in March now, the start of March. The market is different now than what it was in November last year, and that's how quickly the market can turn. People are putting their properties up for sale, thinking that they're going to get prices from last year, and the appetite is not there at the moment. I think what we need is to be in more of a balanced market where you're having some even growth. But what you look for is like an 8 to 10 year cycle is a property market. And yeah, there might have been 2 years of 20% growth, but there might be 3 more years of a negative growth for 1 year or 3%. And that's what you want. You want an evenness over like an 8 to 10 year period. We've just come out of a huge spike, which is unsustainable, and affordability is a real concern for a lot of people. And so you need it to be tapering off, whether it's accelerated by interest rate rises or not. No one really knows. I think that everyone was expecting interest rate rises, but there's obviously a huge concern in the world with what's going on in Europe at the moment, and these disruptions that's causing is going to be flowing through to equity markets, capital markets, lending markets. Whether or not every country is going to be able to raise rates at the way that they thought, there's too many uncertainties to be able to predict it. What I do know is that if you buy quality property, if you have a look at it over the last forever, 50 years, 100 years, it tracks and trends in one way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the safest investments, they say, if you look historically anyway.
Melbourne's best suburbs to buy for investors at the moment.
At the moment, after running so hot, there's not too many great investment sites.
We're trying to get the market.
I might step back out, mate.
I think that what you want to be looking for is, like the average sort of, for investors, the average sort of range is probably between 700 and 800,000. So you want to be looking, okay, what can I get for my money around there, and how much land can I get in those pockets? So do I want to go down to Geelong and buy down there? Do I want to be a little bit further out north and buy some land up there? Can I get some land down, further down the coast, Seaford, Carrum, things close to infrastructure, those sorts of things? Have those prices already gone? That's what I would be looking for. You always look for infrastructure and schooling and affordability. I think that's for an investor. See, the market is starting to soften from a sales side of things, but the rental market's extremely strong. And so that's the balance, is as prices start to taper off a little bit from a growth sense, we're getting this huge amount of demand from renters. So as an investor, you might say, look, we might not be getting 6% growth year on year that we were, but our yields are starting to rise now because people are paying more to lease our properties, and rates are still low. So it depends on what you're after as an investor. Am I looking for just capital growth? Am I looking for a yield? Those sorts of things.
Plenty that goes into it.
Oh, mate, it's a lot. There's a lot.
I've got one more question here. One of my mates is a real estate agent. He spoke more about your research and how you go about it, and what's your method, and you've kind of touched on it really just there. So, but how do you actually get that information? There's certain, especially for those of us that might not be in property.
Yeah.
What websites and where do you go to see all this infrastructure and all that kind of stuff that's going up?
There's the data is all available. It's you can buy it, property data and things like that. So you can see what prices have been doing, and then a lot of it is about educating yourself on why one property sells for something and why another one sells for something else, and that's from experience, going through homes, understanding what the market wants. So when you're dealing with clients, you understand what a client wants. So if you've got a client who's got 2 young children, you can sort of pick straight away. Okay, well, this is the kind of floor plan that they're gonna want. This is the kind of area that they're gonna want. This is probably the kind of house size from a land sense that they're gonna want. They're gonna want to be walking distance to these types of things.
Yeah.
So it's like anything, you practice, kicking a footy enough, you eventually make it look pretty easy.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing as properties. You just start to identify really quickly what makes a good property, what makes a bad one.
Yeah.
That's why we love doing, mate. Aces in Business. We love this conversation. A lot of listeners have probably got your pen and notepads out like we both do. But
those questions were from my mate James from Rain and Horn. He's not as good as the great man, but I thought I'd ask his questions.
Do we want to touch on Morning Joe's and give that a bit of a plug?
Yes, we certainly do. We certainly do. So you've been kind enough to create a discount code for all our listeners out there that are looking to buy some of your coffee.
Yep.
What was the code that you've
I thought we'd use ACES. So if we type in ACES, we can organise a 20% discount. And just a bit of a history on Morning Joe coffee. So, we source the Arabica beans from South America. It then goes and gets roasted and freeze-dried in Germany and then sent out to us here.
Wow.
So the major difference between, the style of instant that we try to create is that ours is freeze-dried rather than chemically dried, brewed in smaller batches, and so there's a freshness to the coffee. And then we individual serving sachets, and all our sachets are completely 100% compostable, so everything can just go and broken down into the ground. But we feel like it's single serve, so you're not opening the packet and then it's getting stale and things like that. It's that freshness. So we're trying to create the sense of a high quality long black that you would get at a cafe, where you can take it anywhere you want. And it's, I think that the feedback that we've had so far is that people are enjoying it. They think that it's a different style of instant, and they're. A lot of people drink instant. Drink instant because not everyone has the access to a local cafe. Not everyone feels comfortable spending the kind of money that like a coffee is now.
Yeah.
And so we feel like there's an opportunity there, and people have been enjoying it so far.
How much does it cost?
So serving packets come in boxes of 12, so it's $22 postage and handling. We're all online, so everything can be ordered online.
Awesome.
I've been walking down to the post office and dropping the boxes.
I've seen that. I love the hustle. I've been there, mate. I used to sell them at the back of the Jeep.
How good's that?
So we send it out and just a little gift card and just some tasting notes and things like that. And we really welcome people's feedback on what they like, what they don't like about it. But we're all online. You can just go on our Instagram page, Morning Joe Coffee, and order online. So
there you go.
And there's more to it as well. I've noticed that, and congratulations.
Congrats on
incredible with everything you're doing. It's awesome. Toby Green's a big long black drinker, so we'll get him some.
I'll have to send up some.
I'll put the milk in there, but I might have to try yours. I've never tried it before.
Yep.
But you donate $1 to a certain charity with everything as well.
We do. We try to. We're sort of big on mental health, obviously, like a lot of people are, and the concerns in society about it. So we try to have a philosophy where it's a morning's made, and like it's almost like a process, a little bit more like meditation, where like it's part of a ritual, and having that time out to enjoy coffee, to relax and to set up your day, and then donating part of our proceeds to helping someone else who might be struggling with their mental health, and being able to if we can contribute in any way to make someone else's day feel a little bit better, then that's the premise behind it.
It's brilliant. Well done.
20% off, ACES discount code, Morning Joe's. It's been live since January, so mate, get on it, everyone. It'd be
and Joe's,
I'll be more than happy to walk down to the post office.
Joe's dropping him off at doorsteps, post office.
Might meet the man himself.
Doesn't get any better. We've got a few more questions here, mate, and these could be some random ones now, and really appreciate everything we've touched on. There's a couple of footy ones here. So from Darcy Blight, he asked, what was it like having James Hird as coach, and can you see him coaching again?
It's a good question. Hurdy was my hero, like as a growing up, and I loved playing with him, and he was a wonderful guy as a teammate. And so, I was really excited when he came back to coach. It's probably the relationship changes a bit because it has to, as a teammate when that teammate becomes a coach. But I think that with what happened, obviously it really damaged him personally, and I think that he still has a lot to offer in the football world, but he has probably got to the stage where he feels like his life is going to be more about the business world, because I know he's got such a smart business acumen. But it's been wonderful to see him come back to the football world, and I know that he's doing some mentoring in and leadership facilitating in the Giants, and I think that he's a really wonderful source of knowledge, and I'm glad to see him back, because he's probably him being lost to the game was to the game's detriment.
Yeah. It's incredible. He's one of my favourites as well growing up.
Superstar.
Get kicked out of Giants, and I retired a bit 1 year early, but now the great man's down there doing
There you go.
Hey, boys are loving him. I hope Hurdy's
Are they?
listening.
Oh,
They're
that's
loving him.
great.
And they're saying that he's Giants is an amazing club. I've only been to 2, but it's an unbelievable club. And I reckon Hurdy's walked in and gone, how good is this club? And it is, because it's so isolated. There's not much, Melbourne media like you probably see. And the feedback from what I've heard from players is, everyone loves him. And, like even Toby, that was his idol as well, mine growing up. And he's mates with Spike and a few of the coaches as well. So I think he loves going to the club just naturally. But, I think he's required, from what I'm understanding, he's just required to be there every now and then for some mentorship. But he's been there like every session, and he watches every.
That's awesome.
He's loving it. So, the boys are loving him, and I think he's loving the club. So it's fantastic to see the great man back at it.
He'd offer great perspective for players. He'd be really great at helping guys, with life out. After footy, life outside football, but also he's got such an enormous amount of knowledge about the game as well.
Package.
I think that's how it all started, actually. Matt DeBoer, who's very switched on, got him involved. Now we're off to horse racing.
Oh, yes. Here we go.
Congratulations on the weekend.
We watched the race this morning, actually.
Did
You
you?
showed me the run through. Bloody hell, convincing.
Yeah,
to say
very.
the
And I
least.
just said when he drove it, you go, mate, where was the tip? Congratulations, mate. So where's it, one on the weekend. What's plans next for Anavisto?
Yeah, it was very exciting. So Tommy Bell Chambers and Cale Hooker and I were out there at the track, and we had a wonderful time and really enjoyed it. And we've been it's a very small ownership group, so there's only 5 owners, and we only own a small part of it, but we just we celebrated like we were owning the whole thing. But she's gone down to the beach for a week or so, because she's got 3 weeks in between runs. So she's going to head up to the Group 2 Emancipation Stakes on March 26th, and then the Coolmore Legacies, which is the 9th of April on Queen Elizabeth Day. So that's the Group 1.
Oh, wow. That's the main event.
Well, I mean, we're very fortunate to have her to win a Group 3, so we're really excited about that. So just to have her running in group races is an enormous thrill. Yeah,
She runs like the trainer, 2K up to the front and holds on.
You can't get in an F45, mate. You're addicted to the track.
That's awesome. There's a lot of people there with horses. They don't win many. It's great. This one's more of a serious one. Who is your mentor? And you might have more than one. And how have they helped you so much?
Yeah, I've got a couple of people that I talk to, and they're there to offer perspective. That's what they help me with, because I try to be as curious as I can. So I try to ask questions of them about the scenarios that they've been in, and they're older people, so they've got wisdom, and there's that saying that the wisdom comes after. And so that's what you need. Like, you need people who have gone through things that can offer you perspective. So I've got a few people that I speak to.
How does Jobe get clients wanting him to purchase houses for him?
Yeah, it's a good question. It would be from past clients is a really good, referral. Mortgage brokers are a really good referral of business, because obviously they're dealing with clients who can't buy, and so they need help. player managers. I speak to a lot of player managers to help out a lot of the players buy properties, and also real estate agents are a really good referrer of business. They're meeting people all the time who are like they're sort of low hanging fruit. Like they're meeting people who are looking to try and buy a house, and then if we've proven ourselves to be good at what we do, then they're able to say, look, have you thought about an advocate? Have you spoken to anyone? Would you like to? And then it's about us to sell our service. We're not sales agents, but we're selling our service like a lot of people are. And then once someone engages us, we're there to advise people to buy. So my job's not to sit on the fence. My job's to have an opinion and to validate that opinion with facts and evidence. So they're probably the main avenues of business: past clients, mortgage brokers, and agents.
Yeah, referrals, fantastic. So you're always on.
Yeah,
can't switch off.
No,
it's great. Back to a footy one. This. Have you still got your Brownlow medal that you won, or did you have to give it back?
No, I never had it. I never had it. I gave it to my mum, and she had it the whole time. And then I think Dad gave it back to.
So physically.
I think so. Yeah. That's what he said to me.
That's brutal. That even hurts me, mate.
Yeah.
I actually put a photo up on my Instagram because I was a big Bombers man. I think it was my second or first year of actually playing at Freo.
Was it?
Yeah, and I was like, what a champion.
So here we are. Now we're in a caravan together talking about business.
Well, mate, that's pretty much all we've got. I mean, it's I could talk to you about. We're going to have with Tommy Talks. This is Aces in Business. We'll talk NFL and NBA and everything else. But thanks so much for your time. What's the website if people do want to use Jobe Watson as a buyer's advocate for them? Where do they head to?
Infolio Property Advisors is the website, and my details are there online, so you'll be able to hit me up and come and chat.
Chat if you're going to New York, we've got Hole in the Wall Cafe. And if you do want your instant coffee at home, Morning Joe's Coffee, use Aces at discount. You'll get 20% off, courtesy of Jobe. He'll even hand pack it and head to the Oz Post for you. Mate, last one, always the best one. But who do you believe would be a great guest for us in the future?
Oh, that's a good question, actually. In the business world, would you like an ex sort of football person, or
we're an open book? We're an open book.
The way we've set it up is, I think Aces is why I put the word Aces, and we haven't really done a show on this, but is someone that's good at sport or good at something, and then obviously in business. So it kind of can be anyone at the top of their game in their field, but if it is a sportsman or woman that's in business, it's always attractive as well. So
okay.
To answer your question, anyone?
Why don't you shoot for the Stars? Is it Rob Scott, who's the CEO of West Farmers? He's an ex-rower.
There you go.
Yeah.
I think Griffin Logue might be family friends with him.
There you go. That's surely the couch.
I think I've been in his house in North Bondi. I think if it's the one, it might be a new guy. Yeah,
there's not too many more impressive people from a sporting perspective who've gone on to business. I mean, he's the CEO of one of the biggest companies in Australia. So
there you go. Leave it with us.
Shoot for the Stars, Tommy.
Do you have a connection to him?
No, I don't.
We'll get it off someone else.
Hey, well, Tommy, Jobe, been a pleasure doing business.
Yeah, it has been.
Thanks for coming on, our first guest, mate.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Appreciate it.
Really appreciate it. And go the Raiders.